It's a great honor for us to talk with Zack this morning. He's going to be talking about leading a campus awakening and just getting onto school campuses and all that kind of stuff. And so we want to try to connect with him. And so, like I said, as he talks, if you guys have questions, please write those down, and we'll make sure to get to those at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up for him. Zack, are you there?
I'm here. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
So, Zack, why don't you go ahead and just open us up, man, and bring us into this teaching. But before I do, Zack, I know there's lots of debate there at Jesus Culture about digital books versus printed books, and so I've got two questions for you. The first one is, are you a digital book or a printed book kind of guy?
I'm more digital, but I kind of roll with both these days.
All right, and then now the question that I have for you is, are you, when you're taking notes on a conference call like this, are you a digital note taker or a handwritten?
I love handwritten notes. I have a moleskin that I carry with me everywhere because I get ideas and all that, and I like to write it out. So.
All right, Zack. Well, hey,
I do to-do lists, but I like to use my moleskin.
Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you stepping up and filling in for Banning. So I don't want to take any more of your time. So go ahead and lead us in, man.
Great, thanks. Hey, guys, it's good to talk with you. Great to just to get to hang out with you for a little bit. I'm going to share just two brief things. Like Ryan mentioned, I'll talk a little bit about campus stuff, but one component that I think really connects with campus is also how we raise up leaders ultimately as you're leading students and even looking at campuses and calling them to lead. A journey that we've been going through, even just in this last year of planting a church, is, this call that we have as leaders to not only set vision, create places where people are encountering God, but to really raise up leaders. And as we've been on this journey this last year, we've really been looking at this thing of people that take ownership, take vision, and lead. And I mean, this gets played out really practically. And we're a new church that started off very large from the beginning, and so things like community, people discovering how and where they're going to lead and engage and plug in. We started shifting the paradigms a little bit because I think a lot of times in Western culture, Western Christianity, we have a very set culture of a consumer mindset when it comes to everything, and that definitely affects us as leaders in the church. And so we've been experimenting, and I want to share a couple of testimonies, and a lot of my story is on campus, but I felt like starting with this whole thing of, as leaders, we are called to help create environments, invest, and call out leaders that won't just follow forms and programs, but will lead and step out and replicate the things that we're passing on and modeling to them to release the kingdom of God wherever we go. So, like an example of that has been, we actually don't do small groups right now. We will probably down the road, but we've started with this thing where we're trying to shift paradigms. So really pushing to this thing of what has God called you to release and own, step out and lead, not because someone's creating a program, but because you're recognizing needs. And I think a lot of people get really frustrated sometimes because they see needs. I think most of us are easier to point out what's not happening, what we wish was happening, but I think those things are actually clues as to what God has actually given to us as leaders, and even those that we're leading, to point them to, this is what God, that area that you're frustrated about, the thing that you're wanting to see and need, like, is actually a clue to the reality that you actually carry an answer to that. And I'll come back to this and how this is played out in our local church, but in my own life, as a high school student, when I encountered God in 8th grade. Grew up in a Christian family, but just got rocked and I was in a Christian school, and I felt like God was calling me to go to transfer to a public high school. And so it's a longer story, but I ended up transferring over and starting just saying, God, how do you want to use me on my campus? And I started with a group of, I think there was like 5 of us, over the summer just praying, saying, God, will you come and move in our school? And we grew to about 15, and we were just praying, God, we want people to see you. And I was very much a part of my high school youth group and had leaders pouring into me. And this group, over a period of 3 years, that was my sophomore year where things really started to take off. We grew from 15 to over 200, and at points we didn't have any room that we could meet in besides the gym because students just started coming, and we started taking this thing, and this is what leaders in my life are doing and challenging me in, is to begin to step out and be obedient with the little things that God was speaking, and then as a result, stuff started just spreading like crazy. We were blessing the campuses. We were picking up trash. We're praying for teachers. We're giving them gift baskets, honoring them, serving the school. It's kind of funny, but we did this thing called there's like Day on the Green where clubs will come out. We had a Christian campus club, and we did this thing where we got hamburgers and had stickers that said, God bless your buns. We're just giving out free food and stuff. It led to a lot of opportunities to be able to pray for people and stuff. But the thing that was so amazing is as just a few of us, as a few students began to step out and lead, it began to get contagious. So where other students, we had I'm from a small town in Northern California, Chico, California. We had every church in our city represented on the campus because students said, I can do this, and it began to activate something in them. So fast forward to what we've been doing with Campus Awakening in the UK primarily right now, but over the years, even on universities like UC Berkeley, and there's been some high school youth groups around. We have a curriculum we released for high school and college. We've just been releasing this simple thing, is that we're ambassadors of the kingdom of God, and an ambassador, wherever they go, they represent and carry the authority of the kingdom that they're representing. And we've begun to see, if we really want to see schools, culture, leaders raised up to influence every area of society, really the core thing as leaders that we have to go after is shifting a mentality in whether it's young leaders or really any age, that this thing of ownership, this thing of engaging with what God has given you, where he's put you. Obviously it starts with prayer, but really using these not only passions that you have, but the areas that we're seeing that need to have an encounter with God, beginning to push into that there's this model of people beginning to gather around that. So like in the UK, we've been doing this thing. We're in 3 or 4 different cities. We're on university campuses. We do a monthly gathering where university students will gather from all over Manchester, which is one of the cities we're in. They'll gather. And then the other 3 weeks in the month, they gather based around the areas that they have influence, they have passion. It could be what they're studying, it could be where they live in the residence hall, it could be what their degree is. We've been doing this a little bit with high school too, but and all they're doing is they're sitting down, they're praying over that area, asking God, what are you saying? What are you doing? What is it that you put either in our hearts or that are obvious needs around us? They begin to pray into it and listen, and then begin to step out. And we've been hearing just amazing testimonies. Sometimes it's just meeting practical needs. Sometimes it's just stepping out and going after. One of the groups is a big medical school. They work as residents. They're studying to be doctors, and they're on their breaks praying for families and people just as they're at the chapel or wherever they're at the hospital. Anyway, the point is, it's really simple. We know all this stuff, but I think our job as leaders, and I could tell you story after story, even some of the things in Berkeley and just some amazing testimonies of what happens when we as leaders begin to point and facilitate, even whether it's high school, whoever it is, even our volunteers, and instead of just giving them, hey, this is what you're supposed to do, leading them to the place of discovering what God is already giving them, one, two, to begin to own and step out, risk, whether it's big or small, in an area and a place that they're at. And so, going back to our church, this whole thing of community is a really big deal to us. But we've been working with a paradigm shift with something like community. We say, hey, instead of a list of programs or groups you can join to meet people, what is it that God has called you to create? What is it that you see as the greatest need around you that you're called to release? And as a result, people, it's actually slower and harder sometimes, but people are beginning to be forced to challenge, to grapple with this thing of, okay, what does this look like for me? You have to get dependent on God. You get dependent on your leaders. You get dependent on the community around you, because it's actually hard, but it's in that place that you grow. So I don't know if this is making sense to you. I know Ryan had mentioned, and Banny told me that you're, as youth pastor, you're primarily working with high school students. I'll tell you this. This challenge, whether it's on a campus or leading and raising up leaders, is the greatest opportunity we have in really, truly having impact on not only individual lives, but society, culture, and schools. And this journey that we've been going through, just even more recently as a community, some of the things we've been doing with Campus Awakening in the UK, is really just saying, hey, how do we step back and look at what's our strategy? What are we going after? And I would say this for us: we started looking at even some of the things that we're believing God for in our region, and we realized that even some of the things that we're doing or wanting to go after can at times contradict what our end result is. And what I mean by that is if we're saying, hey, we want to raise up leaders and empower them, one of the ways we measure success as a church is not how many people we gather, but how many people we're sending, and that our goal is we want to raise up people that encounter God, are empowered to engage our city. And I think we all would agree that that's what we want to see, but the strategy piece is how do we even step back and look at the method, the things that we're doing, and ask ourselves this question: Are we empowering and engaging leaders, or are we just teaching them but not challenging them to step and begin to engage, take risks and ownership, and obviously testimony, inspiring, releasing faith, destiny, dreams over people, is a huge part of that. But we want to empower and raise up leaders. And, one of my favorite passages of scriptures is a story, where Jesus, happens on a couple accounts in the Gospels where it's shared where, the multiplying of the five loaves and fish. And, this whole thing where Jesus is, if you read this passage before this, Jesus is, the disciples are complaining, and they're saying, hey, we don't have bread. These people are hungry. Send them away. We don't have a solution. They're doing what most of us do. They're pointing out problems. But what Jesus asked them, he says, you feed them. And they said, we can't do this. And then the second thing he asked them, he says, what's in your hand? And that's this thing for us as leaders, for our volunteers, for our students or people we're leading. Like, this is what Jesus did with his disciples. Is he didn't just let them see the problems. He said, hey, what are you going to do to fix it? One, and two, what do you already have? And I think that is just so key for us, and it's this opportunity that we get to invite people to be part of the solution, to be part of the answer with what they're seeing around them. So, Ryan, I don't know, I could keep going, but I don't want to go too long. You had mentioned about going about 15 minutes. So do you want me to keep going, or do we want to talk and have some questions here?
Zach, why don't you talk a little bit, just maybe a couple practical things about that you guys have done getting on to campuses. Just as a youth pastor, we often see all kinds of things. We hear all kinds of stories. I know one thing you guys are real passionate about is that when we see or hear those things, that it's our responsibility to get involved and not just standing by saying, well, it's somebody else's responsibility, it's somebody else's thing. So maybe you could speak into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say two ways, just really practically on getting on a campus. We've seen models where, it's just a formal campus club that either already exists and is happening. And nowadays there's cases where that's just not allowed. And we've actually seen equally just as much success where, with or without a club, students and as youth pastors, we have the ability to bless and lead. And so, practically when there is a campus club, you're already on the campus, and I think the key question you want to ask yourself there is not, are you just meeting in a classroom and having whatever type of gathering on a campus, but what are you doing to serve, impact, and meet needs of that campus, of students? And so really moving from either, just gathering in to really looking how to serve, honor, reach out, and engage those around you. The model that we've also seen with schools where there hasn't, you can't have a campus club or something like that, is the great thing about that is whether even they allow a youth pastor on campus or not, students can gather and meet. And so when they can't have a campus club, we'll just say, hey, gather together either on campus during lunch with students. And this is where you as a youth pastor have probably more of a responsibility to train them, outside of when you're meeting on campus. And so we use the same model and say, hey, as students, start praying. How can you honor? How can you serve? And so I think we can engage and serve no matter what. We're doing some things here in this region that we moved to, where we're seeing, no matter what the stance is of a school, you can, when you approach an administrator and say, hey, how can we serve you guys? How can we honor you? How can we meet a need that you have? It opens a wide open door. And we have schools here in the area where I just went to a meeting where we had youth pastors, senior pastors, superintendents, principals of multiple schools, where we have churches. In some cases, it's parents, youth groups. There's people that are they're just coming to the schools and saying, how can we serve you? And there's the whole Folsom, which is one of the areas we're in, Folsom, Cordova area, had a meeting with the superintendent of the whole school district saying, hey, we have example after example of schools, elementary, high schools, junior highs, where churches have come in, no agenda, and in some cases there's not a campus club or whatever, and they're just saying, hey, these are our greatest advocates in the community, because they're not coming with an agenda to just, convert everyone and get them to come to our church. They're just coming and serving and leading in the midst of budget cuts and lack of resources. And so, it's kind of a long answer to say this, is whether you as a youth pastor or leader have more influence, favor, and access to serve and engage administrators, teachers, and a campus than you may realize. 1, 2, your students have the most access, and if they're the ones that are standing out, that are serving, honoring, loving, engaging and meeting just very tangible needs on a campus, doors will open wide open on a campus. And we have stories of, Scott Thompson, a guy who's been with us for a long time. He was a youth pastor over on the coast here in California, and he's teaching his kids this. He's teaching them how to just step out and pray for people, how to serve. And his kids were crazy. I mean, they had a time where there was actually a car accident, and a student had died on their campus, and so the whole school was impacted. And one of these girls who was in his youth group is just, she had just gone out of her way to love and pray for this principal. Earlier in the year, students with their own money bought a pretty expensive watch for this principal just to say, hey, we're glad you're here, you're our leader, we want to bless you. She had built favor with her and sewed into and served. When this thing had happened, she was unapologetic as someone who followed Jesus and is loving, but she was not just this radical Christian. She was someone that was engaging and loving and honoring. They set up a room and gave this room to her and some of her friends because they just had started to pray for people who were so impacted by this loss of the student. And they were just loving and praying. And the principal gave these kids a classroom during school time to pray for other kids. That happened all the way going back to honoring, praying for, serving. And so that's something any of us can do. And I think this reality of engaging ourselves as leaders, modeling this, but then really practically asking what are needs, what are ways that we have access to serve and to honor, and doors get open there for us to then truly even minister to the heart and the lives of people, but we have favor and more open doors on the campus. And the hope is that, our students, whether they're playing sports or they're, whatever club they're in, that they're learning and discovering not only how to carry the heart of God, but how to carry the pieces of gifting and pieces they have to demonstrate who he is in all different areas. And the campuses are the training ground for leaders to lead in every realm of society. It's the microcosm of part of our culture. It happens in high schools and universities. And if we can teach our students this now, we'll begin to see this in government and science and education, because they'll know how to do this in every area.
That's awesome. I love what you just said. The campuses are the training grounds. It's just so good. Zack, how important do you think it is to partner with, say, like football teams? I know football season is going on right now, and some of the sports programs. How important do you think that is for youth pastors?
It's huge. I mean, Banning and I love soccer. My girls are young, and so I'm coaching soccer in our community. Banning is assistant coach of the varsity girls team. His daughter plays basketball. He's actually helping coach at a school that his daughter used to go to. And so sports are a huge way. We have a lot of athletes that you have a platform, obviously, on a campus in the sports area that they're the most visible, many times prominent leaders on a campus. And coaches and teams, like, there's always needs, whether it's lack of money, equipment, whatever. And so I think, practically just do the things you love too. I mean, myself, Banning, our team, we love sports, and it's a fun and easy way to jump in and serve at school. And the crazy thing is Banning's been he'd like to brag about this a little bit. If he was here, I'll do it for him. He started off, before he started coaching, just doing sports. He was doing the sports announcing for the beginning of the games, introducing the players and whatever, because that was the need they had. Someone came up to him and said, "Hey, you're used to talking in front of people with a mic. Can you open up the game and introduce all the teams and everything?" And so he got music, and he's pulling in background stuff, making up nicknames for players, and people just loved it. And he just started getting this favor on the campus. And, it's the same thing for me in soccer. We just start finding people that we can serve. And, we have people in our church who's actually, they're teachers or they actually coach. And they have maybe you can't coach, but when you jump in and just start interacting with parents and players and administrators and teachers, you begin to break down the stereotype of what so many people have of this church, and they start to realize, oh, you're a normal person. As a youth pastor, you're not some guy from this church that they're maybe nervous about or have no grid for, and they just want to keep their walls up. That's the power of meeting felt needs and meeting tangible needs first, because it opens the door to meet the real need. Bill Johnson was just at our church for our one-year celebration, and he spoke this message about if you look at even a lot of what Jesus did when he healed people, he often, he got called in and he's praying for, a centurion's daughter, or he's praying for, he's releasing healing, because that was the immediate need for people. I mean, that's what the supernatural, that's what even serving and stuff brings, is people have these needs, but they're not asking what the real need of the question is. They need to know what a relationship with Jesus looks like, but they're not going to ask you that question. They're not going to ask for that. The needs that they're going to respond to are their immediate needs, whether it's there's someone really sick, or they don't have money to meet a program need on a campus, or they don't have people to pick up trash because high school students are pretty messy, When we meet the tangible needs, it opens the doors for people to ask the questions that really, we're often answering the questions that no one is asking. When we need to answer the questions that people are asking, or meeting the needs that people have, because then that opens the door for us to bring the answers to the questions that people should be asking.
That is $1 million statement right there. I think that's so true. We're often answering questions that no one is answering. So, Zach, what do you think the balance, trying to find the balance between empowering students to lead and be involved and kind of take the leadership role versus the youth pastor, or like a campus club president type, outside person or teacher? What do you think that, in your opinion, what do you think kind of trying to find that balance, that tension between student-led and maybe the quality's not as high, and youth pastor or like teacher-led? What do you kind of see for that?
Are you talking about on a campus club, or just across the board?
Yeah, I mean campus clubs, even just like you said, when there's times when the school has a lot of resistance towards adults being on campus from the outside, and you could suggest just having them find groups to pray and all that kind of stuff. Just finding that balance between, youth pastor getting in there, making the connections versus students.
So I think there's a way to do both really well. I mean, that's what you have youth group for. And even if there's really specific initiatives, whether it's a lot of cases there's citywide type things with an emphasis with multiple youth groups on a campus. So I think as leaders, we need to set an example and model excellence, and it is our responsibility to train and equip and pastor these students. So the thing that tension is I don't think that the place to do that is at a campus club. Unfortunately, it's a campus club or groups turn into a Bible study on campus. And so it's very inward focused. I mean, you can never go wrong studying the Bible. So there's nothing, that's amazing. That's if that's all you're doing, it's a win. However, that's what we're doing at Weekly Youth Group, and we're discipling, we're training. So there, our lunch period is 30 minutes, 45 minutes at best. So students have to be able to step out, fail, not do something well. That's how they learn. That's how we learn. You learn how to do something well by often not doing it well at first. And so our job as leaders is to be the best example, to pour into them, and then empower them and coach them through stumbling, failing, figuring out, not how they be you, but how they be who God's made them to be, but we're pouring into them. And so really practicing on the campus, like there was a youth pastor in Madera, Charles Rigby, who's a great friend of ours and has done a lot of campus stuff. He's had huge ministry in Madera on campuses. Their campus clubs are student run, but they do their training, equipping, pouring into through youth group on the side, and then they're sending them out. But at the same time, is they're not telling them, hey, replicate a youth group service by doing worship, having an amazing speaker, great icebreaker, da 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 da. It's moved to way more practical, like, hey, live this out. So that means sometimes they're just going out during lunch, they meet in the room, they pray, and they just go out and walk and say, look for ways to pray for people. And these are students. They've done other things where students' idea where, we're going to do this, we're going to get tons of pizza, give away pizza, and share testimonies or do whatever. So as a youth pastor, you have resources and you're coaching and supporting them, but if they're stepping out with the ideas that they're getting and engaging in, we're helping them break the mold and paradigm that it has to look like a full-on church service on campus, and instead we're shifting the paradigm to say, hey, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be if that's what you want. That's what God's put on your heart. But instead of us telling them what to do, we're not going to answer those questions. We're going to teach them to look and say, what are the needs? What are the questions that students and teachers are asking? What are the needs that they have? And helping them discover that and learn how to step out. And so I think you can do both, but it does require like a shifting of what many of the campus club or models have been. It's not to say they're bad, but I do think sometimes we can get into a rut. Something good happens and it works for someone else, and so we replicate it, and then we have to realize we have to continually be adjusting. Things are changing in culture on campuses, with students, with administration. I think right now the powerful thing that we can really do is equip students and model that and do things really well, but then find tangible ways. Students are very different as well. You can get a super high-level leader that as a sophomore or junior that just is amazing, and then then you can get someone that you really have to really work with them. And so that means your strategy has to adjust. Classes revolve and rotate, and you have different levels of leaders that come through. So you have to adjust your strategy based on who you have, what the current landscape is on the campus or campuses that you're ministering to.
Yeah, Zach, that's great, and I think I think oftentimes we think that the only way to get on is through a Christian club or something like that. But I love what you're saying of just going to principals, going to teachers, and just saying, how can we help? What's your need? How can we serve you? And the heart is really just how can we serve you, and not having such an agenda, but just saying, hey, we have a heart for schools, we have a heart for students, and we just want to serve you. So, hey guys, we're going to switch over to a time of question and answers now, and so I'm going to go ahead and unmute the line, and if you will have a question for Zach about campus clubs or even what they're doing out in Sacramento, feel free to push *6. That'll get you in the line there, and we'll go ahead and jump into this time here. So like I said, if you got a question, go ahead and hit *6. That'll get you into availability to ask a question. So, but Zach, why don't you just talk a little bit more about that? Just how do you kind of figure out what the questions are that you feel that even schools have? Oh, I think I muted him as well. So. Hold on, guys. sorry about that, Zach. I muted you, man.
I said you were done. I said too much.
You're done, man. So how do you think we find needs?
Well, one thing that I'll say is I've actually, as we've talked with some students or youth pastors, we've actually told them, hey, based on certain situations, right now, actually don't start a club. And so really practically the way that you find, it's really simple, but there's, I mentioned that it was a school district meeting where they invited pastors in. I was one of the pastors that was there. They invited principals as well. And, I think because of sometimes how the church has represented itself, we've shot ourselves in the foot and, we've become scary to people. But it was crazy. We're in this meeting and the superintendent is saying, hey, go find the principal. And so, really simply, you find the needs by asking. You may already have relationships through a coach or teacher, or there may be a door that you just have because of your own student or students that are there. But if you don't have any of that, you can set up an appointment with the principal or vice principal. And, our church meets on a high school campus. We rent a facility. So we've adopted this campus because we're there every Sunday. And, obviously we have the business side and we're renting their theater, but then what I do and what I tell other youth pastors, I've done it myself and I've seen it over and over, is just set up a meeting and sit down. If you can't get a meeting, send an email and say, hey, this is my name. Is there anything we can do? Nothing's too small, nothing's too big to serve this campus. We're a part of this community. We're for you. And, they're always skeptical at first. And so even for us at the high school we meet, our church meets at, the thing they told us was, we have trash everywhere. Can you help us pick up trash? So we're like, hey, no big deal. We'll do it. And then, that has progressed to where they'll ask us, and we keep telling them, what is it? What do you need? And what the issue isn't the need. The issue is trust. If they don't trust you, they're not going to ask you. And so that's, what we have to do is we do have to say we're available, but we have to become trustworthy, which means we can't just push an agenda. We have to have a long-term approach and not just a short-term, if I do this in the next 6 months, I'm going to increase my youth group and, however many people are going to get saved. Obviously, that is what we do want to see that. But if we only focus on that, we become short-sighted and we hurt our relationship with these leaders that we want to. As a youth pastor, you're going to be in this city and have a youth group for a long time. If you can build trust, they're going to start calling you when they have problems. They're going to start, I've heard and seen where, the principals they're seeing what's happening, and there isn't a couple like, hey, you need to start something. You need to do something here on campus. So building trust is the key way, and so you just got to ask.
That's great. Let's get into some of these questions here. All right. Go ahead.
Hey, my name is Austin Scott, and so this is kind of my question is, I live in Texas, and here, honestly, there's a lot of competition between churches, and the last couple of years, actually just some people in this area have done a lot of good things to begin to break that down. But for me, my question is, how do you balance students wanting to get involved in their campus, but they see their actual campus club as not run very well by their FCA leader, and so you talked about unlocking their dreams and what they see the need is, and so how do you balance getting students to do that, but also part of me wants to say, hey, go serve your campus club and bring your dreams and vision there. But sometimes, honestly, it's not worth it because the person running that campus club isn't. They're a science teacher and a football coach, and then the SCA leader is kind of third or maybe even fourth on their priority list. But I also don't want to say hey, just forget them, do your own thing. I don't know. How do you kind of balance that maybe?
I think this is where the paradigm has to shift where, when I was in high school and even a youth pastor, the model was, hey, start a campus club and every church works together and we have one group. And I don't think it fully works. And that's one of those things where it's like, hey, if our goal is what we say it is, to see a whole campus encounter God, then a campus club is not enough. One campus club won't work. So, what I would say is for your students, like, obviously bless that campus club, but then ask them, and this is where the whole thing is, moving away from starting campus clubs. It's not that you can't work, there is one or whatever, but starting first with, for you and your students, what's this one student or group of students have on their heart? Empower them, and if they don't start another club, but instead just began to lead, then you could, honestly, you could have, the dream would be you have 50 groups of students that are gathering, praying, leading a meeting. Obviously, hopefully they know each other, but, if you look at a campus like a city almost, like, it would be ridiculous for us to say, hey, there's only going to be one church in this city. Like, we all know the more churches we have, the better. And we're not in competition, but there's a lot of people. If you look at the percentage of people coming to church or that the churches are ministered to versus the amount of people in the city, that percentage is not where we want it to be. It's the same on a campus. And so we have the opportunity to teach our kids now, hey, you just got to lead wherever you're at, and they're beginning to learn how to honor even and not be in competition with other people, but still step out and do what they're called to do. If that makes sense. So my short answer would be I would tell your kids, hey, it's easy to point out that the FCA group is not that great and run well. That's that thing where there's an excuse of, well, nothing's happening because it's not done well. It's the wrong question to ask. The question we need to be asking is, what is the need we see? What is that thing that God has put in the dream and vision and desire for that student that they want to see happen? Help them cultivate to step out and do that. That's the key.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, let's go into the next one. All right, go ahead.
Hey, Zach. This is Carlos from Fairfield, California. I got a question.
What city are you from?
Fairfield, California.
Fairfield, nice.
Yeah, that's NorCal. So
yeah, man.
But I have a question. So, and this might be a holistic question out of the whole campus ministry, but what's the greatest lesson you've learned while doing campus ministry?
I think for me, starting as a student, but then also leading other students, I think the biggest thing is, like, never underestimate that thing that God speaks, to you. It could be a dream, it could be vision, it could be just a heart for something. That's a seed that is huge. For me as a student, I was having these dreams and goals when nothing was going on the campus to say, man, wouldn't it be amazing if my whole soccer team was praying before games and I got to speak to the whole campus and talk about the love of Jesus. And I had some crazy dreams and nothing was happening. But those dreams, because pastors and people around me began to cultivate that, those became a reality. And I've seen this when pastors and leaders have done this with other students, that that approach that's God speaking, and it's God's heart, that it's not just a wishful thinking thing, but something to come up. And so holistically, I think things are it's simpler than we make it out to be sometimes. And paying attention to that whisper, that dream, that thing that's in a student is huge, because I think many times it's pointing to the thing that God is doing or wanting to do on that campus. It's really simple, but sometimes I think our strategies and our plans and even all the models out there can get in the way and actually convince people why that thing can't happen. And I think we have to build our strategies and our structures to shift and around just this simple thing is that we're called to step out and lead, and even how we measure success, you know.
Cool.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, the reason why I asked that question is I learned that was a valuable question I learned from John Maxwell, and just I've used that anytime I've met with people who just are doing great things. So, and I know that there are failures in that, and you hear great stories out of it, and it encourages me and also the others around here able to hear about it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I would say the one-liner is, you know, we have to be people that we step out, we create new molds and strategies, not just follow the things that are out there.
Yeah.
Carlos, you're the man, dude. You just got married recently, right?
Yes, I did. It's great. I think I'm 4 months, right? I think, yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations, man. We'll have to hang out soon.
Yes, definitely.
All right, cool. Hey, let's get to the next caller. Mr. Michael, go ahead.
What's up, man? Hey, Zach, appreciate you being here and all the information you've given us.
Yeah, man.
I had a quick question. I'm sure we all can probably think of, you know, a handful of students that can make a big impact on the campuses that they're at. And I know there's different ways to invest in them, whether it's, you know, the one-on-one or just in the group or whatever. Is there anything that you guys use or any material or what have you seen work that really kind of pushes those students from just having potential to really fulfilling that potential they have?
Yeah, I mean, we have a Campus Awakening. It's like a kit. There's one for high school, one for college, and it has it just covers some basic things like prayer and like leadership, stepping out, like and even just praying for healing for someone, or like it's kind of a video series and there's a workbook, and so like we've developed some tools like that. We have a thing called Emerge, which is an online resource curriculum. So we've been developing, you know, there's testimonies or videos of things that God's done to try to release and build faith. So if you go to Emerge or you go to the Jesus Culture store, we've tried to develop resources just from stuff that we've seen work with. You know, Banning was a youth pastor. I was a youth pastor. We've been working with students. I will say, so there's several resources that not only we've done, but I know other people do. I do think that you kind of have to tailor it to the like you're saying, the student that you're working with, because what they need may vary. And so that, you know, one-on-one, or if you're pouring into a handful of students, you may have a group of them and investing in them. What you need to train them on is, you know, may vary, but I think aside from the equipping stuff, which there's a lot out of, the other thing that's really key is walking through and facilitating them asking questions. Like, for example, like if you like, a lot of times they don't know how to start and finish a vision that they have. They say, hey, I have this dream to share the love of Jesus with the whole campus, you know. So I was like, what do I do? Like, I don't even know where to start, you know. So to kind of reverse engineer it, and instead of just saying, hey, you could do this, and this, sit down with them and begin to ask them questions like, you know, walk them through, like helping them self-discover, like, okay, we're going to pray for this, but where do you think we need to start, you know? And it's hard because we have our past successes and stories and things that we can do, but if we can walk them through and get them to like start writing out practical stuff, and you know, just leadership one-on-one stuff, but not answer it for them. Like, at least for me, that's what people did for me and still do for me, even as I'm still growing as a leader. And that's the step I remember the most, because then I'm like, oh, okay, now I got to go do it. That didn't work, and then you become this coach and the sounding board with, one leader or a group of people and strategizing. And a lot of students, they don't want to fail themselves. They don't want to let you down as a leader. They don't want to let their parents down. So to remove some of this pressure and say, hey, let's see what happens, and this is a journey here, and facilitate that, they're going to grow like crazy. And honestly, that's some of the most rewarding things that I've ever done in walking with someone, is not doing it for them but helping them do it,
Yeah, that's good. I've gone through some stuff like that, more of the coaching aspect, trying to get them to come up with the answer on their own through asking questions. And so, I was just wondering, what you guys have done. So I appreciate that insight.
Yeah, you can check out, I don't know if you've seen it, you can check out their video, the workbook. There's like 8-week online courses on a lot of different things. There's we just started a thing called Leadership Community, but that's more for leaders. But and then one other practical thing that I do is I always leave people with like an assignment kind of thing, like, hey, we're working through this, but we're not going to meet again until you do this, because there has to be this element of risk and ownership, and it could be just a little thing, but I think that's huge, because people can learn and be taught things till they're blue in the face, but if they don't actually ever do anything, then they're not going to fail and learn what they need to do, or actually step out and see, wow, this works,
Yeah, thanks. And I've used the Campus Awakening material. It's awesome. And we're also, everyone on the call today is going to be getting one of the modules from some of their small group curriculum that they're using on identity. So we'll be sending out an email to you guys with free access to that. So be looking for that. So let's get into our next caller here.
Hey, this is Andrew from Oklahoma City. I've been a youth pastor for about 5 weeks now, and I'm looking to start student leadership that's more of a core group of leaders, high school students. What would be a good way to start that? Is it just like open invite, or should I just go and pick a few students that I see could do well with being a core group of leaders?
I would pick them initially, but then, it depends on how you're structuring it. I personally would pick them initially. Just you've been there 5 weeks, so if you don't know them enough, well, then you could open up and invite them. Either way, you're gonna starting a core group means you're gonna find out where they're at in different levels, and so. Either if you know enough, like, hey, these students got leadership potential, I would start there, and sometimes there can be different kind of circles, like of people that are really bought in. Obviously you're going to invest and pour into people that are really hungry more than even those that are just kind of hanging around. So if you don't know, like, hey, these are the top 10 or 5 or however many the size you want this core group to be, then if you have open invitation, you need to have really clear expectations and almost like some barriers to where you have to have some skin in the game, because then what happens is it's like, oh, yeah, I'll come, and then it really doesn't end up being a core team because people are flaky and they don't come, and you know what I mean? So either way, either you invite someone and say, hey, this is what this looks like, here's the expectations, da-da-da-da, or you open it up and you have kind of a clear, like, if you're going to do this, this is what's expected, just so that you make sure you have buy-in, because you're investing in them, but you want to invest in people that it's different than your normal youth group night or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's hard since you've just started. If you know who those kids are, I would start by inviting them, and then you can expand it. But the key either way is real clear. What are the expectations? And obviously there's a benefit that they're going to get from more focus from you as a leader, probably some opportunities to do some things that maybe others couldn't. So even if you start with just personal invite, you can expand it as you build this thing and say, okay, now we're gonna invite more people in or whatever. So it's whatever you think works best with where you're at and the group of students you're working with.
And I know all the students because I moved up from a youth leader to the youth pastor, so I have a great relationship with a lot of the students. I just didn't want to come in and have too many, and then not get what I want.
Yeah, then I would.
Needed.
If you know them all, start with just inviting them, start building something, and then you'll know, okay, you get into your rhythm, and you'll kind of get through what you really want this to look like, and then it's actually easier to expand it and bring more people in a little later. When you start with if you already know, hey, these students that I've kind of identified are all in, it's way easier to build something off of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and then it's a good problem if someone's like, hey, I want to be a core leader. That's always a good problem, to have, where more people are asking you, hey, I want to do this, and you can adjust if you need to, but that's always a great problem to have.
Right.
Andrew's doing a great job, man. He's a killer guy, so he's going to do a great job. So let's go ahead and move into our next question.
Hey, this is Philip from Oklahoma City. I'm actually one of Ryan's interns. I got a question for you, though.
Yeah.
How do you cultivate the passion inside of the students to move on their own campus without just kind of living through them? How do you get them to have their own dreams and visions for their campus?
I think one of the best ways to do that is actually by sharing testimonies, sharing stories of what God's doing in other people, whether in your own life or people around you currently. There's something about a testimony that activates faith, the possibility even in our own lives. It's one of the primary ways I'm inspired besides, God just, speaking to me in different ways. And so I think the more you expose them to what could happen, it'll actually start them to think and dream about, wow, what could God do in my life, or what could God do in my school, And I think a lot of time we have lack of passion, vision, dreams because just the reality of what is happening and what is possible has been diminished, And so otherwise it's like, hey, you need to do this, you should do this. What is God telling you to do? And then it feels a little bit more forced. But when it's the other way around, it's when God's speaking or you're inspired because you saw something and it triggered something in you, it's pretty powerful,
Yeah, that's really good.
That's the best. Getting into an encounter with God or getting vision from just exposing people to stuff is powerful, Tell them to read, give them books about what God's done in the past, show them stories, videos, tell them testimonies, take them to go see something. It'll expand their view of what God could do.
Awesome.
Well, Zach, thank you so much for your time, man. It's been great. I know there's a lot more that we could talk about, and really just appreciate you being here and hanging out. So since it's early in the morning, Zach, I got a question for you. What's your morning breakfast cereal?
This morning I had some grape nuts. I don't have one set cereal. Most mornings I'll just drink coffee, but if I do have cereal, I'll have whatever it's usually Cheerios or Grape Nuts or oatmeal.
Okay.
That's fun.
That's pretty exciting, man.
If I could choose, I would do Lucky Charms every day, but I don't.
Yeah, you can't live off the Lucky Charms, so that's good. Yeah. Well, hey guys, just a couple reminders. We've got a couple open dates left for our travel team coming out. So if you are interested, please text me, respond to our email, or email us at info@victoryleadership.tv. We'd love to come hang out with you guys. And then next month we'll be meeting October 29th with Kevin Moore, former youth pastor of Church on the Move. And also we've got the $10 discount on our leadership small group starting up in October. We'll be sending all that information out to you in the email, and all the information you can get on yproundtable.com. That's yproundtable.com. And in the email, we will be sending out your free coupon for another training from Jesus Culture and a 4-week study. So we're just honored to have you on the phone, man, and congratulations on your guys' 1-year anniversary as a church, man. That's a big accomplishment.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for letting me hang out with you all. It's good to chat and hopefully get to meet you or see you guys sometime soon down the road.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, hey, appreciate it so much, and God bless, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everybody.